So, Doug, happy to have you here today. Super nice to meet you. Really look forward to getting into this conversation. You've got an incredible story, but setting aside jail, recovery, drug addiction, all of my favorite subjects, perhaps your greatest achievement is that you got Amy Dresner interested in fitness. I don't know how you did that. That's like a miracle. So you got some kind of gift.
Well, I mean, when I first reached out to Amy to interview her for my new book, and I was talking to her about working out, and I just saw that I was like, man, you're so skinny. I was like, have you ever worked out before? And she was like, back in the day, here and there. And, I was like, oh, here, do these exercises. So I gave her like some stuff to do on her own, some foods to eat, and she like didn't do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to train you. So, we kind of helped each other out. She would help me because I didn't know a lot of people since I didn't get sober in the 12 steps, I didn't know a lot of people who were in recovery, like that would be open to interviewing for my book. So I just say, if you can help me, like, reach out to some people because I just don't know. Right. And I'll help you out with your workouts. And that's kind of how it started. And, she's just like everybody. She wanted to see results like instantaneously. Of course. And I told her, I said, listen, you got to be patient. It's going to take time. I said, think about how long you've been beating up your body, physically, not really doing anything. And, she actually started seeing some results like mentally first. She really started feeling better about herself. She really started, noticing the importance of being dedicated to something. And then at first, from it being a daunting task of her working out, she was texting me, can we work out today? Can we work? I'm like, whoa. And then she was like, look, I'm getting some curves. And I'm like, and it's fun too, because we have fun. I mean, we do it on Skype, and she's the most uncoordinated person you'll ever meet. She's like falling out of screen, and she'll be the first to tell you that. And she like, dropped the dumbbell on her forehead the other day, like trying to do a skull crusher. And I was like, I've never seen anybody do that before. Right. So it's, I got to tell you, it's been fun.
Well, she's refreshingly self-deprecating, and I love her. I think she's just amazing. But when I had her on the podcast, which was a little over a year ago at this point, I would not have pegged her as somebody who was going to be getting like obsessed with getting fit all of a sudden. So it's super cool that's the path that she's on, right? And you're the catalyst for that.
Yeah, it's been a blessing. I mean, as a trainer, people always ask me like what makes me feel good as a trainer, and the physical benefits, helping somebody lose weight or run faster and get stronger is definitely good. But just watching somebody see the mental aspect and the emotional component of it, and especially people in recovery, because I really think that fitness and nutrition are two of the most underutilized tools in recovery. And so Amy, to be able to see that and now write a piece about it, it's just been something that I'm just really humbled that I was a moving part in that story.
Yeah, it's cool. She just wrote this article that came out on The Fix that you're a big part of, and I'm sort of quoted in. And Mishka, my buddy, have you met Mishka?
Not in person, just through email, just through
the But I think you're right. I'm somebody who I know that you got sober outside of 12-step. 12-step, just like with Amy. I'm a 12-step person. AA is how I got sober, and it's still, the number one thing in my life, super important. But there's plenty of truth in this idea that there's space for trying to build in healthy lifestyle habits. And, I don't know if it's an additional step, but, there's a lot of smoking cigarettes and drinking too much coffee and, a lot of cupcakes and donuts going on there. And I think, it would behoove the community to embrace a healthier way of eating and living and moving as part of that program of becoming more integrated and whole.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who did get sober outside the 12 steps, I have the most respect for them. But I think outside of that, you're right. I think there is some room for fitness and for nutrition. And I think as people, once they stop, using the drugs and the alcohol to deal with, insecurities and stress and whatever. I mean, they got to replace it with something else, and not so much in a addictive way, but just in a mindfulness way, and being able to exercise and just building that, dedication and the ability to achieve goals, I think correlates into recovery as well.
Do people say to you that you've transferred your addiction onto fitness?
I mean, no, because I guess now I'm at a point where, I only probably work out maybe 45 minutes to an hour a day, 5 days a week. and I make sure to take the time to rest. I make sure to take the time to enjoy myself. I mean, you know, I guess I can definitely see where it can, right? If I was working out 3, 4, 5 hours a day with no end goal, like for no reason, if I wasn't training for anything crazy to work out for 5 hours walking on a treadmill a day, then yeah. But I mean, nobody's really ever said that to me, because there's other parts of my recovery, like with some of the people I hang out with and my spirituality and helping other people, that fitness isn't just it. I don't think you can just do push-ups and sit-ups and never use again. I just think fitness was the catalyst to getting me into recovery, and then helped me along the way to meet these other things, other people in my life that have kind of helped me get to where I am now.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, I said this, I shared Amy's article with the caveat, or not the caveat, but just the sort of explainer that for me, you know, fitness is a huge component of my recovery program, but it's not a replacement for my higher power. It is not my recovery program, you know, in its complete sense. It's just an aspect of it. And I've gotten into trouble in the past, and I've seen other people get into trouble in the past when they put fitness above everything and think that that is the solution to what ails them at the expense of everything else. And that is not, I mean, just speaking from my own personal experience, like that's not a tenable path.
No, and I kind of, to be honest, you know, I at first thought, you know, when I got out of jail, that I could just run and do push-ups,
right.
and
to enlightenment.
Right. And then I hit a point, and then I hit a point, and I was like, like I look really good. I feel really good. I'm doing, like, I have a great job, but I'm still not fulfilled. And there was that point, there was that part of me that was that spiritual component that came in, that I ended up, you know, developing a relationship with God, because I didn't have any relationship with anything. And then also, like, the importance of having mentors in my life, people that have been through life, either in the business world or in the personal development world. That's kind of like almost like my sponsor. So if I'm having like a bad day, or if I got a business thing or I mean, that I need to bounce an idea off of, I have them to call. It's not like I'm just like putting my head down and trying to do it myself. I mean, for a while, the first few years, yeah, the ego got in the way, but then I got humbled really quick and was like, boy, you better like learn to include some other aspects into this, or it's going to be a really long road for you.
Yeah. So who are those mentors for you?
I mean, I got to say my grandparents first and foremost. I mean, because when I got out of jail, they took me in, let me stay with them. So, I mean, they are some people I communicate with every. Where
were your folks in the whole equation?
So, I mean, my parents and I kind of had a torn relationship as a kid. You know, I was kicked out of my mom's house when I was 16 because I was, you know, running around smoking pot and acting like a little devil child. And and then my dad and I kind of always we always butted heads with each other, and then kind of it was just kind of like I just kind of burned every bridge at the point. And my grandparents had just said, you know what, like, we'll take you in under these certain stipulations. I had to have a job. I had to bring them receipts for where I was going. I had to be in at a certain time, like certain accountability that I never wanted to follow in my life for some reason. I just was like, you know what, like, I need to do it now.
Yeah. So where are you at with your folks now?
My mom and I have like a really, really good relationship. Like better even than when I was a kid. Like we've kind of both come to terms with the things that happened when I was younger. And my dad and I, it's a family can be kind of tricky sometimes. And, you know, we'll talk here and there, but I just kind of, it's hard, you know, for me because he's my dad, but you know, hopefully one day if it's intended to, it'll work out. But right now we talk when we can.
Slow-briety, man.
Yeah, slow-briety.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel you. It's tricky, man, but time has a way of healing these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's track it back, create a little context here. So paint me the picture of your wayward youth.
So, I mean, growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 5, and I was always the kid that was super, like, I love being active. I love playing sports with my friends. I love, you know, playing like recreational sports, but I was just like the most terrible athlete ever. I couldn't run, I couldn't jump, and I could hardly balance myself. And so I was always like one of the last ones picked. I was always like the slow one. And so, and on top of that, I was eating very poor. Like, I mean, like lunch or dinner, I was obsessed with like pasta, and I would eat like pasta and butter for dinner. I would eat like cinnamon buns and like sausage for breakfast. And genetics didn't bless me with having one of those faster metabolisms, so it caught up to me real quick. But so when I was 12, I started gaining weight, And like 10 to 12 years old, I was like a little heavier than most kids, and I started getting depressed because I had this divorce and I had these insecurities, and I'm now being depressed. And then my luck with women wasn't very good. And then by the time I was 14, I just was looking for a way out, and I got offered a hit off a marijuana pipe, and I felt like this monkey come off my back. Like I could be myself again. I could be secure in who I was. I didn't have to worry about any problems I had in my life. And then it just, like we all know, snowballs into the next thing, and I'm selling it to support my habit. And then I'm barely graduating high school because I didn't go to school as much as I should because I was skipping to smoke, and started experimenting with coke when I got out.
Let's slow it down, man. There's plenty to we got time. I want to understand this a little bit better. So start smoking pot at 14. And walk me through the path from, that first hit to like, now I'm going to start dealing, like I'm selling this.
Well, so I was super lazy as a kid. And so when I started smoking pot, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And I need to do whatever I need to do to get more of it.
That like the light switch just went on. Like, this is for me. This is the answer to every problem I never knew that I had.
Yeah. Any insecurities, stress, anxiety, like anything was gone after I smoked pot. Like I felt at ease. And so I just started meeting people and asking them where I could buy more pot. And then the more I realized I loved it, I was like, well, me making $6 an hour here washing dishes, I can't afford to buy as much pot as I need to. So I'm going to start selling it to support my habit. And that's what ultimately led to me getting kicked out of my mom's house when I was 16. I had a party when she was in the hospital, like right before my 16th birthday, to try to fit in with kids, because that was like the thing you did in high school. Was you had parties when your parents were away. Well, my parents didn't go away, so I left the bottom window unlocked and snuck back in after she went in the hospital, and cops came to my townhouse, and I thought it was a good idea to run, for my own party.
They're not going to figure out who lives here.
I mean, an hour later, I'm getting these calls from my neighbors, my family. They're like, "Where are you? Get back here!" And there back I went. And then it was about a few weeks later on my 16th birthday. I was weighing out a little bit of pot to sell to one of my neighbors, and told my brother, I was like, watch the door so mom doesn't come in. And in she walks. Mm-hmm. And that was it. The next day I was kicked out of her house that day. That next day I switched high schools, went from Delaney High School, which was a pretty preppier high school, to up in the country where my dad lived, to North Hartford. It was like, they had drive your tractor to school day, and the people who went there, they called them duck farmers.
It's like north of Baltimore.
Yeah, it was like Hartford County. So probably from Baltimore City, it was probably about an hour north, up towards the Pennsylvania line. And it was just a huge humbling experience for me. And I guess they thought that it would, to kind of take me away from the drugs. But I mean,
right. So your parents deal with this in the way that they deal with it. But I would imagine you would say, irrespective of how they chose to handle it, like you were going to be an addict. Like this was the path for you, no matter what. Is that fair?
Yeah.
With that light switch going on like that. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, what I'm interested in hearing is, given that there's a lot of sort of parent age people that listen to this podcast, and being a parent myself, I'm interested in there's the knee jerk parental reaction, like, oh my God, let's catastrophize this, versus what is the healthier response? Like, how can you be loving and compassionate and understanding, but also firm and not codependent when confronted with a situation like that?
Well, I mean, I think with them, they just didn't really know how to handle it. They didn't understand it. I mean, it wasn't as, back then, I'm talking, 15 years ago. I mean, it's so much more out and about now that my mom probably just did the best she could. I mean, she didn't know what to do. She couldn't take the stress. I found out years later that she had multiple sclerosis, and stress with that obviously doesn't mend well. And, I guess years later, I remember saying to my mom a few years ago, I said, I wish she would have looked at why I was doing drugs, not the fact that I was, because I had a lot of depression from the divorce. I was being picked on at school. My athletic ability was terrible, and I had a huge passion for sports, and I was watching all these kids that were really, really good at sports, and I was always the kid that never made the teams and just looked on the sidelines being like, man, Why not me?
Right.
And it just unfortunately led to a big downfall for me.
Yeah. It's hard to know what to look for, and it's like when you look in the rearview mirror, it's very clear, right? Oh, here it all lined up perfectly for it to unfold in this way. But when you're in the moment of, you have to be hyper present and aware to see those signals, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they were still unpacking stuff from the divorce, because the divorce was it was rough. They weren't communicating hardly with each other, only via email, and there was child support
through
stuff.
Their own thing.
Yeah, custody and child support. So, I mean, they were battling their own things, and I think, having me make the choices I made just added fuel to the fire. And they were like, you know what, like, I've tried to talk to you and just get out. And it was at a point in my life, that I was 16 and I was maturing as a man and being without my mom, because obviously, when things don't go your way, there was a violent fight, not physical, but yelling at each other. I said some things I would never imagine saying ever again to her. And it crushed me, because I needed my mom in that time. I was struggling the most at that time in my life. And I just really, hindsight's 20/20, because our relationship right now, I mean, it changed forever, being that, there was a point where I wasn't allowed to live with her anymore. I wasn't allowed in her house. Yeah. That it changed the trajectory of our relationship forever. And it's just now being able to talk to her openly and be like, Mom, you're my mom and I love you, but I can't say I have the same emotional connection that other people do with their moms because of the choices that I made and that we both made and where life took us. And it's sad, but now we've both gotten to the point where we can talk to each other openly about it, which we never really had. I mean, it took, 5, 6, 7 years for her to really come around and really be able to talk to me about it and forgive me.
But that honesty is a bridge to, greater intimacy. It may not be, the intimacy that you see in movies, like the ideal, mother-son relationship, but, the most intimate that it can be given the circumstances. What do you make of this current embrace of marijuana that we're seeing in our culture right now? It's super interesting times, because for the most part it's essentially legal and it's super easy to get. I mean, especially here in California, it's ubiquitous. There is this kind of weird idea that's floating around out there that pot is kind of part of the wellness world, with CBD, and the use is so profligate that it comes off as at worst benign, but perhaps a performance enhancer for certain people.
Right.
And there are a lot of people out there that kind of use it all day long, every day, and they seem fine. And yet you're somebody who, for better or worse, pot was like a gateway drug. And it's it's almost laughable, oh, pot's a gateway drug, ha ha ha. That's so not true. But in your case, that really was true.
It was, and I get asked a lot too about it, and they're like, I just say, obviously, just like anything else, it depends on the person. I'm not for recreational marijuana. I mean, obviously, the argument is, well, alcohol is legal. Well, I mean, yeah, it is, but it doesn't make it right. And pot was a gateway drug for me, because I couldn't smoke enough pot to get high anymore. I couldn't. There was a point where it stopped working for me. I developed some sincere paranoia, just because it just stopped working. And I was smoking a quarter ounce of pot a day. And for those listening who've ever smoked pot, that's a lot of pot. It's not like I was just smoking a joint a day. And so that led to me wanting to experiment with other things, not only experiment, but meet other people. Because once you get into the game of you're starting to sell pot and you're starting to do more things, you start to meet people with harder drugs and more people doing it. And that's what led me ultimately to try something else that's going to alter my mind, and cocaine. And then I learned cocaine and anxiety don't go well. It's it's not, it's like the worst possible thing. And then
if you're starting to get paranoid on pot, then the move to cocaine is going to.
So, but here's the thing, and here's the other thing it's more of a lifestyle thing with the pot. It's you ride around with your friends and you smoke pot and you're listening to this or listening to that. And I couldn't give that up, so much to the point where that's what started my opiate habit, was that I couldn't smoke pot anymore with my friends because I was getting crazy anxiety attacks. I was like, I wouldn't be able to drive. My friends were like laughing at me because I had no idea what was going on, but you know, I was having anxiety. And I got offered a 5 milligram Percocet one day, and I was able, again, that same monkey that came off my back when I started smoking pot was the same monkey that came off my back when I took that 5 milligram Percocet. I could get high again without having a panic attack. And I couldn't give up smoking weed. So that's the other thing. It's like you build this community of people you get high with and you smoke weed with. It's probably just as hard to let go of, you know, aside from giving up pot, if you're somebody that it's, you know, impeding your life or you're struggling with it. And a lot of people don't think about that.
Yeah. So where does the Percocet take you?
Oh, I mean, literally down the highway to hell. I mean, once I realized how much that could help me continue to smoke weed, I also realized how much it would numb the pain of me being in a point where I'm, you know, 18, 19, 20 years old and really disappointed in myself because I was a smart kid. I wanted to be like an accountant. There was times I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in the FBI. Like I had some big aspirations as a kid, but you know, I lost a few friends to drinking and driving accidents when I was in my when I was younger, and so I just thought I was going to die by the time I was 25. I just was like, well, it doesn't really matter. And so each time I would get high, it would numb the pain, and I didn't really understand. I mean, I knew obviously I wasn't putting kale in my system. But I didn't realize how addictive this stuff was.
Yeah,
you know. And I thought, well, I'm not doing heroin, so it's okay. And that was just my way of just making it seem like it's okay.
Those goalposts are always moving too. You know, if you started doing heroin, it would be like, well, I'm snorting it, I'm not shooting it, or I'm doing it, but you know, I don't live in a flop house, or you know, whatever it is. Like I'm not, you know, I don't have, you know, abscesses in my arm, so I'm okay.
Yeah, and then so the 5 milligrams turned into me needing to do 10 to get high, and 20 and 40, and then to the point where I was, you know, buying the Oxy 80 milligrams and we were getting them from a guy who had cancer and was giving them to you know, and it was just the thing, you know, we were licking the time release off, and I had like blue dye and red dye and orange stuff all over my t-shirts, and got to the point where I was spending several $100s a day on opiates and doing some really bad things with my judgment that, you know, I just burned a lot of bridges with people, and I just developed a new group of friends that you weren't my friend unless you were getting high with me, or you could lead me to getting high, and it was bad. I mean, half my left nose, my nostril was missing just from putting so much crap up there. And
so you're snorting Oxy.
Yeah.
You grind it up to override the time release aspect of it.
Oh yeah, and I wouldn't do anything unless it was like pure Oxy cotton, like codone. You know, where
were you getting it?
Just from connections I had made from the drug world, or you know, I had a friend that worked at a pharmacy, and then I had somebody that, you know, that knew somebody who had cancer, and you know, there's obviously a huge market in that, and they were a lot cheaper than they are now. I mean, now like the street value, I think, it's like doubled since I was doing it. I mean, I think you get like an 80 milligram Oxycontin pill for like $40-$50, and now it's way more than that from what I hear.
And how would you, for somebody who's never taken that or has never done opiates, like explain the feeling of, you know, a day on Oxy? Like, what is it, you know, what is it doing for you? Like, what, you know, this is an epidemic.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
there are millions of people that are hooked on hillbilly heroin. It's a gigantic problem. So, you know, what's the allure?
I mean, you'd be riding around with your friends or with your friends looking like almost like it's another high, learning how you're going to score drugs for the day. And then you couldn't really eat because you didn't have any appetite because you were half withdrawing without having it. That, you know, once you finally did figure out who had the best deal or who you could con to get them, you get them. You know, like I said, we would lick the time releases off. We'd crush them up on a DVD case, like always snort them with a $100 bill. I was like, oh, and off a blow DVD case. You know, that was the cool thing to do it, right?
Right. Okay. Oh God.
And then we would go eat, and like a meal for me like would be like a cheesesteak and 2 slices of pizza and French fries, and then we would like, you know, sit on the couch and like just like talk about dumb stuff all day.
Right, good
like,
times, man.
Yeah, like veg out and like watch like, you know, like The Wizard of Oz or something, you know, something, you know, or watch just movies, and I mean, nothing really productive. Play Xbox, play FIFA soccer. I mean, we did a lot of playing FIFA, and
but your life gets really small.
It does, and you don't realize how small it gets. You think that's it. You think that life isn't going to get any better, and you don't realize that you don't have to go get high before you go to a football game, or you don't realize you don't have to go get high before going to dinner with your mom, and you don't realize like what you're doing and how other people kind of see that, whether they're judging you or not. But you just all of a sudden think that like what you're doing is like it's okay, and once you get out of it, you're like, I can't believe I did that stuff.
Was there an awareness that you had a problem, or did you just think I can stop at any time?
For a while, I really didn't think I had a problem. I mean, I knew what I was doing wasn't right, but that's all my friends and I did. Mm-hmm. So like my community around me, that's what we did. So it was like it was a normal thing. It wasn't really until I started really not being able to get out of bed, when I was, got myself above the like 150 milligram a day habit, that I was like, dang, I can't get out of bed without like feeling awful, that something's gotta give. And then when I would try to like, withdraw a detox on my own, I would think about everything again. Like my life would come up, all the choices I'd made and all the people I'd, pissed off, and where I was headed. And then the stress of selling drugs, that I was like, well, I can't be comfortable in my own skin. I got to find a way to get more drugs no matter what. And you know how it goes. It's just,
the pain of that tidal wave of emotions and shame and guilt and anxiety and depression, all of that comes just toppling down on you so hard that you have to go back. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about the cycle of addiction. You have this well-intentioned desire. You understand, like, can't live like this anymore. And you take a stab at trying to get better. And then the minute you start to experience that, the pain, the emotional pain of it is so severe that you're just like, fuck it, I got to go back.
Yeah. A lot of people think that people like want to be addicted to drugs. And it's like, I don't think anybody wants to. Who wants to live a life like that? And everybody wants to get well, and they have the intentions of doing so, but like they don't think they can, or they don't know how to, or they've just had so much trauma in their life that they have no confidence in themselves at all, that they don't even like believe that they can go 2 hours without it. And it's really sad.
So this whole house of cards comes toppling down on you.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, share that aspect of the journey.
Yeah. So, you're not exactly the brightest person when you're, putting copious amounts of drugs up your nose. And my friends' parents, it was funny, as I had torn relationships with my family growing up, my friends' parents kind of filled in and were always kind of there for me. Even though where I didn't have a place to stay because I didn't want to abide by rules or whatnot, I would sleep on couches. And my one friend's dad was like, Doug, you're riding around with, everybody knew what I was doing. They knew I was riding around selling a bunch of pot. They knew I was like, the goofball, snorting oxy. And they're like, you better change your headlight. They're like, that's like a red flag to get pulled over by a cop.
Yeah.
And, of course I was like the king of procrastination, and I never did it. And Cinco de Mayo 2008, I'm riding around with a few of my friends to go pick up some Oxycontin. I had a half a pound of pot in my trunk, hidden in where the spare tire was, thinking, don't worry, no one will ever find it here. And had a bunch of cash. And all of a sudden I'm coming, and there's a cop coming on the opposite, or running radar on the opposite side. And I flashed my high beams at him, thinking that it would hide the fact that I didn't have a headlight. Of course, it gave him reason to pull me over. He's like, why is this guy high beaming me on Cinco de Mayo, which, of course, I completely forgot was one of the biggest drinking holidays of the year. And it's
any excuse to pull you over.
Yeah. So he pulls me over, and it's me and two of my friends. My heart's racing. I'm like, holy crap. I just had this gut feeling that this was it. I'm done. I just had a feeling something was going to happen. And I was like, I have all this stuff in my car. What do I do? Where am I going to hide it? And the cop approaches my window, asks me to put my window down, which had happened before. I've been pulled over before, and luckily didn't get caught. But this was different. It felt different to me. And all of a sudden, one of my friends in the back seat had an open container of beer he was drinking, and the smell of alcohol was wafting out the car. He's drinking a natty light or something, right?
Of course. God.
And he wouldn't give up. The cop was like, I smell beer. And and the guy, my friend, ended up like not really at first relinquishing the can of beer. And I was like, dude, just give it to him. Like, he might let us just go.
Like trying to hide it.
Yeah, because I was only 20 years old.
Right.
We were all on, you know, and so he ends up giving it to him. And, you know, then he asked me more questions. He's like, do I have the right to search? He's like, I give me reason to believe that, you know, you have some illegal stuff in here. Do I have the right to search your car? And for some reason I said, yes, go ahead. And then he's like, all right, come out of the car. And, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. If I'd said no, what would have happened? But I mean, neither here nor there. And I said yes. He pulls me out of the car. I was like, well, they're never going to find the pot's in the spare tire, right? And out comes the pot and all the money. And like my heart was already racing. It was like racing like twice as fast. I'm like crying. I was thinking about all the negative choices and all the things that have happened, that the choices I made and everything that had happened to me that come to that. It all came to a point. And I'm sitting in the back of that cop car, and I just didn't think I was going to make it, Rich. I got to tell you, like, I thought that was it. I thought I was going to either spend the rest of my life incarcerated or just kill myself. Something bad I thought was going to really happen. It ended up being the biggest blessing in my life.
Well, I would submit to you, and I'm sure you've thought about this, but perhaps on some level, albeit maybe an unconscious level, you wanted to get caught. Yeah. Because if you had people saying, look, man, you got to change your light out. Yeah, you can chalk that up to laziness. But the fact that you didn't get your headlight fixed, you turned a blind eye to the fact that it was Cinco de Mayo. And when the cop asked you if he could search your car, you said, sure, fine. Like there's something inside of you, I think, that was trying to save yourself by getting caught.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I had no other way out. There was no other way out. I knew I was going to get to a point where I was either dead, in jail, or a combination of both, because my friends and I always like joked around that we weren't going to, they were like, what's the point of like living past 30 if we can't like party hard anymore?
Right.
And so I just was like, I had like come to that realization that was going to be my life. And then I remember going to jail, and you spend that night in jail that was, you know, it's awful, right? Because you're like, I'm like high on opiates, but hadn't gotten the next high that I wanted. So it was like a total buzzkill, like to the like fullest extent. And then, so I put like 70,000 miles on that car. I got pulled over and selling drugs, and I was also a delivery boy. So it gave me
delivering pizzas.
Yeah. So it gave me an excuse to like ride around and you know, a couple buddies and I worked at the same pizza shop. So we would park our car at like a Burger King. We'd all ride together and go on like a high ride and smoke weed together and, you know, pinch off like French fries here and there out of people's foods. And so, but I put 70,000 miles on my car. And so a few weeks later, after I got arrested, I didn't change my oil, and I was driving on 695, and my car like blew up. Like it just started smoking. That was it. Just died on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh man. So my grandparents.
Well, it's a metaphor. Just like, just like ride it hard until the whole thing just blows up in your face.
Yeah, and my grandparents talk about another like not silly choice, but it was almost like that I almost wanted to make was, you know, we met with I got charged with the felony, the intent to distribute marijuana, and, you know, possession of paraphernalia and stuff. And I knew the only one that really mattered was when I got arraigned for the felony charge. And my grandparents were like, all right, we'll give you money to pay for a lawyer or to get you a car. And I was like, well, if I don't have a car, I can't do drugs or sell drugs.
Right.
And I was in the whole
you're genius.
And I was in the whole $5,000 to a drug dealer. So, because when I got busted, I was already like leading up to my arrest, like I had been robbed. Somebody like ripped me off like a half a pound of pot, and I was in the hole a couple thousand to him already. And I was literally done. I remember going to my grandparents, and we were just talking about this. I said, I'm done selling drugs. I was like, can you please just lend me the money to pay this guy off and be done with it? And they said, no, we're not funding like a criminal activity for you.
I find it kind of charming though that you're honest with your grandparents. So like, I'm selling drugs and I'm in trouble. Can you help me?
Well, they kind of like I want to, but we were talking about this recently, and it was almost like the biggest blessing, because if they did, it would have just given, who knows where I would be now. And so when I owed this guy $5,000, I ended up, getting like a Geo Prism or something that was like, that the driver door ended up like breaking. So I had to like Dukes of Hazzard it to get in every time. It was like the most awful thing to pick up a date in. But So I owed this guy $5,000, and he was obviously after me for $5,000. It's not like I owed him like $20. And my brother actually ran into one of my roommates at one of the local bars, and my roommate had told him what was going on, and my brother called me and was like, hey man, like I heard what happened, and I heard you owe this guy money. He's like, I want to give it to you. I was like, man, you don't want to get yourself involved in that. And he's like, no, I want to. I was like, all right. And so we met at the bank. He pulled out $5,000 in cash. He was one of my brothers, a couple years younger than me, and he was always the kid who like saved all his money. I spent all my money. He saved all his. And I remember meeting this drug dealer we were at like Outback or Carrabba's or a restaurant like that. And I gave him the money, and I just said, listen, man, I'm done. And I thought that would close a chapter in me and not being in debt and working on paying my brother back. But, you know, one thing led to the next, and I ended up borrowing more money to get high, and borrowing more money and borrowing more money. And to the point where now I've owed him and my brother on like nearly $10,000 for drugs, and lying about what I needed it for. And so September, I got arrested in May, and this kind of all transpired with paying my drug dealer off, you know, in the months to follow. And September, I went to court, and I was high in court. I was supposed to like, you know, they were like, you better like pass some drug tests like before you come to show you've been like clean, and they didn't do that.
So did you just have a public defender?
Yeah, well, so my dad had he knew like a guy who was like a general attorney. He wasn't like any high power attorney or anything, but I guess just somebody there. It was kind of like just to be there with me. And I had no idea what to expect. All the lawyers I had talked to were like, you're definitely doing jail time. It was my first offense, but they're like, you're in Harford County, which is like a super conservative county. And they're like, you had like a lot of pot, and they found a scale, and you admitted that you had drugs, like that you admitted that everything in your car was yours. So,
and your lawyer didn't say, listen, man, you got to at least post up at some AA meetings and get a court card signed, and so you can show the judge that you're trying to mend your ways.
I think they had said something like that. I remember I walked in, and I just didn't really matter. I didn't care. And I got to court, and the judge looked at me, and he was like, you know, he'd asked me serious questions, was cross-examining me, and I just obviously admitted to everything. And the lawyer had said, hey, we've kind of made a deal with him that he's going to give you the maximum sentence, but I think you're going to like what he has to say. And I was like, maximum sentence? And so he looks at me, and he's like, Doug, you know, I find you, you know, guilty of the felony drug charge, intent to distribute marijuana. And he dropped the other stuff, but he said, I'm going to sentence you to 5 years, suspended everything but 90 days, meaning I just had to do the 90-day jail sentence, and I was backing up to 5. 5 years probation, 200 hours community service, all kinds of drug classes and fines. And he's like, Doug, and then I had to abide by the rules of parole and probation. And he's like, but if you complete everything without messing up after the 5 years is up, I'll take the felony off your record. And I remember looking in court. I was looking at him in court, and I was 20 years old. And I didn't think I was going to live to see my 25th birthday. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I was doing the math. It was like 2008. I was like, well, isn't the world going to end in 2012? Like that whole thing, right? So I was like, 5 years. I was like, by the time I get off probation, I'm not going to be able to experience life.
Yeah.
and I got out, and
I mean, that's pretty amazing. 90 days.
Yeah.
Jail time.
Yeah.
And then everything else you can deal with, you know, outside.
Yeah, and I didn't know how, because to that point, like, I hadn't found a successful way to stop doing drugs.
Right.
Like, I was like, how am I going to do this? But I knew I had to, because he was like, if I completed everything, the felony would come off my record. But I had no idea. And then, you know, I got out of court, and I went to go get high again. And, you know, it was like definitely like the one last hoorah. I went to jail a week after my 21st birthday, so a few weeks later, because it gave me some time to like kind of get my belongings, spend some time with my family, which I didn't really do. And I remember reporting the jail, or right before I reported to jail, it was like, I'm going to do as much oxy as I can. I got a prescription of Suboxone to take in with me, because I was like, all right, well, I'm going to detox, and they're hard. So I'm going to need something to like wean me off. And of course, I didn't realize Suboxone was a narcotic.
Yeah, they're not going to let you bring that in.
No, I thought they would. And so I literally like did like, I think like 2 or 3 80 milligram pills before I went in, like And then, like I literally did them and then
Suboxone.
drove. Of Oxy, and then drove
Oxy.
it, and then had the Suboxone with me, thinking I could take it. And then I get there, they strip me of all your belongings, and my life's confined to a small cell with a bag. And they're like, "You can't take this Suboxone." And I'm like, "Why?" And it's prescribed to me. They're like, "It's a narcotic." I was like, "Oh no!" And then, day one, it was just like, it was hell. I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen in there. I was like, you're worried about all the stuff, all the stigmas of jail, getting beat up, getting taken advantage of, and I didn't know what to expect, because I could have been a model for Pillsbury at the time. Like I was heavy, I was unathletic, I couldn't defend myself if I wanted to. And then I get to jail, and I end up getting kicked out of my first 2 cellmate cells because I didn't read jail 101 on how to abide by the rules. I mean, I ended up crawling into my first cellmate's bottom bunk when he was out doing some stuff in the common area, because I was so weak I couldn't get up to the top bunk. And he comes in, he's like, "What are you doing?" And out I went. Like, luckily I didn't get my butt kicked. And then my second one was this older guy. I ended up like doing something to piss him off, like I think I was out of toilet paper or something, used his white washcloth to like wipe my butt or something. Right?
That doesn't sound like a good idea.
No. So
I don't know that you needed to read a manual on Jail 101 to understand that was probably a bad move.
Well, I mean, I know. I just wasn't, obviously, I was like a complete, like, the people in there were like, you were a zombie when I first came in there. And I detoxed for like 2 or 3 weeks, like hard. Like, I mean, vomiting, feeling like you're crawling out of your own skin. And I saw this guy, like, he came up to me at the Scrabble. He was playing Scrabble. He's like, "What are you doing in here, man?" He was soon to be my cellmate. And I'm like, I don't know. And then that night after dinner, I saw him working out. He was like, climbing the stairs and doing like thousands of push-ups. And I was like, oh my God, like running like David Goggins style. You know what I mean? Like, and I just like, who is this guy? And he's like, and he had been, I've come to find out, he had been in for 10 years. He was in the jail I was in on a detainer for violating a probation. And he just looked at me, and somehow he asked me a little bit about me. I shared a little bit about my story. He was an opiate addict, and he just kind of was like, "You're going to start working out with me." And I was like, "There's no way, man. There's no way I'm going to work out with you." Because at the time, I'd never really done any organized exercise other than gym class here and there. I mean, my parents got me a trainer, but nothing like that, that lasted, that stuck. It was almost like they knew I needed to lose weight because I was always the fat kid, And I remember finally, after him being my cellmate, because he finally, it just happened when I pissed off this old guy, his cellmate left, and then he was like, "All right, you're in with me." And he was like, "Once you get through your detox," which is, for about 3 weeks later, "you're going to start working out with me." And the first night, man, Rich, I tell you, it's the most humbling night. I mean, if I hadn't been humbled enough by the stuff, like being able to not do a push-up from your knees in front of a bunch of grown men, or hold yourself up in a plank and then have your guy tell you it's because you're fat, is so humbling.
Well, I got a whole bunch of questions.
Go ahead.
I mean, first of all, could you not have gotten high in jail?
I mean, there really wasn't.
Would it have been possible to score?
There was some stuff that came in, but not really. Not like that. I mean, not where I was.
If you had read Jail 101, maybe you would have known how to
people were bringing
hustle that up for yourself.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, people were like, people would come in and spend weekends, and that's, I think, when some of the stuff would come in. But it wasn't like I wasn't in state prison where it was.
You're not in prison. It's different, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it wasn't. There's not a lot of drug trade that goes on in there because people are just, I think, trying to get in and get out of there, or trying to await their court and not mess up, hopefully, before they go to court.
All right. And so the second thing is then, was there like a commitment to yourself? Like, okay, I'm going to get through this detox and I'm going to get sober. Or was it just like, I can't get anything in my system today, so I guess it is what it is. Like, was there a sense of like, I got to sort this out for myself and get on a new track?
It was more just a panic. Like, as I was going through it, I didn't know. I'd never gone through this before, so I had no idea what to expect.
You've never done a full detox.
No, what to expect. And I was shaking, and I mean, I don't know if I had, at that point, I didn't really have a desire to be like, I'm never doing drugs again. I just was like, I need to get through this detox so I can stop crying and stop shaking and stop feeling so nauseous all the time. And the pain, the aches came because, you know, I was taking copious amounts of painkillers that I'm like so like numb.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I had to wake up once I got through that, which was really tough. I had to realize that I had nothing in my system anymore to numb the pain. So all the stuff just came before my eyes of all the stuff I'd done, all the stuff I'd never really dealt with inside. And it took a lot because there was no drugs. There was no, you know, gambling or spending money or whatever, you know, would fill the void. It was just me. And I really had no choice. I mean, and then like you get through detox and you realize, well, like, whoa, like I'm in jail right now. Like, you know, your mind starts to become less foggy and they're like, I got to eat that for lunch. And it was like, you know, like sweaty meat sandwiches, we would call them, because it was like mystery bologna meat. Or like peanut butter and jelly, which wasn't, I would look forward to the peanut butter and jelly days.
The reality of your situation kind of dawns on you.
Well, yeah. And then when my cellmate was like, you're going to start working out with me, I was like, what else do I have to do in here? We can only play spades, pinochle, Scrabble, and chess, and tell war stories for so long before I got to do something else.
Right. So this guy, Eric is his name, right? He becomes your cellmate. And this guy, not only is he, you know, this fitness specimen, like he takes more than a real interest in you. Like he basically becomes obsessed with getting you fit. Like he really takes you under his wing. And like this guy changes your life for better or worse, right? So why, like what motivated him to be so committed to you?
I think he might have saw something inside of me that just struck a nerve with him. He saw how much I was struggling. And for him, he probably he knew he was in a spot where he had made some poor decisions to get to where he was and to make himself feel better, you know, because we all want to be of service, right? It's like a natural thing for us to want to help other people. That was part of what he wanted was, well, I'm in jail. He's like, you know, I'm sure he was like, you know, I'm in jail right now. I got nothing else to do. Why not this kid here, this poor, goofy kid, who's a train wreck right now, and kind of like was like the Amy Dresner, right? Like, how about I try and change this kid's life? And I don't know why, but I don't know why he picked me out of all the people, but I just think because as much as I wanted to quit on him, I never quit. And you know,
why do you think you never quit? Like what got lit up inside of you that made you suddenly go from being, you know, just the Pillsbury Doughboy type guy to being like, I'm not going to let this guy down. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do everything he says.
Well, I think when I couldn't do a push-up from my knees and I could barely walk up and down the steps, and like I was like in the realization of what my situation actually was, I was like, what have I come to? And then they also, like, a lot of the people in my past, like, didn't believe in me. Like, they didn't believe me. They're like, you're not going to make it. Like, you're going to rehab when you get out, and da-da-da-da. Like, all the negative stuff that I had no one, like, believed I was going to really make it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to prove people wrong. And then once I was able to see some progress, like, I think I was able to do, like, a few push-ups from my knees. I was like, wow, there's magic in this. And then Eric, for some reason, I believed everything he said, like, for everything. And I think I could just feel in my heart that it was like authentic and genuine from a place where he was coming from. Like, he had nothing to lose, right? Yeah. And then it really started where we set the goal to do 10 push-ups when I left, and then to run a mile. And I felt like this light switch start to go off in my head. Like the same monkey that I felt come off my back when I was smoking pot was the same monkey come off my back when I was running. And I would run, and sometimes, like, I mean, to start, I could obviously only run like a tenth of a mile. We'd have like this common area inside jail where all the tables were set out at, and there'd be TVs and there'd be people playing Scrabble and games and stuff, and you could run around the perimeter. So I would hold like a deck of cards, and I would count, you know, 1, 2, like the laps. And so one of the
how big was this room?
It wasn't big. I don't remember how many laps was a mile. It must have been like, I don't remember. It was a lot. Like,
so there's no gym.
No gym.
You're doing push-ups on the floor in the common room, and
on the concrete. It's like, you know, and so I just felt like I could be able to kind of relieve the stress of whatever I had going on in my life by running, by doing push-ups, by starting to achieve some goals. Like I was able to do a few push-ups for my knees. That led to me doing a push-up for my feet. And then I was starting to see some differences in my body because he put me on like a jailhouse food plan where I couldn't eat the bread and I couldn't eat like the Snickers bars. And, you know, we did have cheat meals on Sunday. We would call them like hookups, where we would take all our like, we take ramen, we get ramen noodles off commissary, cheesy rice, like the little dude, like little sausages and the meat from the week. And we'd put it all in a plastic trash bag and use boiling water, tie it off, and then like let it sit for like 30 minutes. You'd have like Thanksgiving in the joint.
Super gourmet.
Yeah.
It's like amazing.
I remember when I got out, I'm like, guys, you want a hookup? And they're like, what? You want a hook? No. I'm like, make you a hookup. And they were like, and I was telling them, they're like, dude, that sounds absolutely disgusting. But then all the people inside of the jail, like besides my cellmate, were like cheering me on because they saw when I came in, I was a zombie. I was getting kicked out of cells. I was like, you know, freaking out, asking a million questions about what jail was going to be like. And then like they saw the consistency of me running. And when I was able to do the push-ups, I remember my dad and my brothers coming in to visit me. And this was like the turning point for me. And, you know, he was, you know, he wanted me to, he was very stern about me going to rehab and this and that. And I just didn't, I was like, listen, I was like, screw rehab. I found fitness. And whether I believed it or not, I had to believe in myself, because if I didn't believe in it at all, I wouldn't have gotten started to be where I am today. And he started yelling at me. I remember just hanging up. I was like, how much worse can it be? I'm in jail right now. And I hung up the phone, walked out, and walked into my cellmate. I was like, let's fucking work out. And he was like, what the heck just happened to you? I was like, and I just told him how my dad and I got in a fight. And he was like, you know, let that inspire you. And that's what like kept me going, was like all the people the things that doubted me, all the stuff that I never was able to accomplish, like fueled my inspiration to change. It really did.
Yeah, your story is similar to other people I've had on the show who've been in, you know, comparable predicaments, from John McAvoy, Chris Schumacher, who was in on a murder charge, Charlie Engel, who would just run around basically running ultra marathons. Right. You know, and my sense is that when you're in an environment where you're stripped of, you know, your freedom and on some level your dignity, there's so little that you have control over, right? And how you move your body throughout the day is something that you do have control over. And it's a way of maintaining that sense of self and saying, you know, you could take this from me, but you can't take that.
Yeah, I mean, I had nothing else to do. And that was one of the hardest parts, to be honest, was leaving. I cried when I left because I had no idea what was going to happen. And you had a community, it sounds like. I mean, not only did you have this guy, Eric, you had all these people cheering for you. And, you know, if you ask somebody like Gabor Mate or Johan Hari about the roots of addiction, you know, Johan famously always says, like, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection, right? And you develop this connection with these people in a way that's healthier from your boys that you're driving around, you know, like getting stoned with. Oh yeah. And suddenly you're going to be extracted from that environment. Like, of course I would, you know, I would suspect that was terrifying for somebody who's newly sober, who really doesn't know what to expect when they go back out into the world. Yeah. I mean, that was one of my biggest fears. Like, what am I going to do now without these people? What am I going to do? And I remember there was one night I cheated on my diet, and my cellmate, he was always like, if you cheat on your diet, I'm punching you in the stomach. And I knew it was really doughy, and if he punched me in the stomach, I might end up in like the jail ER. And so I never cheated, but there was one night and somebody told on me. And I remember I hated it, but I needed it. And he was like, all right, Doug, you know the deal. You're either going to run like 2 miles, or I'm punching you in the stomach. Some other dude, like, yeah, he ratted you out. Oh, yeah. I'm like, dude, what the heck? He's a prison rat. Yeah. I'm like, I can't believe you snitched on me. He's like, dude, I'm doing it I'm just trying to help you out. And I remember writing my mom this letter when I was in jail, and it was funny. I just was going through, the reason I say this is because it kind of brings some things into perspective, is, you know, my mom and she was the one that I always had I wish I hadn't done some of the things that I did, because I know I really hurt her, and she was emotionally kind of timid from the divorce and obviously the MS and everything. And I was going through a file with her, probably, it must have been 6 months, not even 6 months ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And she's like, I found this in my house, and it said Doug Jail. It was like a manila folder with like my court documents in it. And it was some letters I had written her. And the one letter, which I completely forgot that I wrote her, was just talking about how much I'm changing while I'm in there, and that I just want her to be happy when I talk to her on the phone, and that I'm not going to let her down. Like all like stuff. I mean, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something of that nature. Mm-hmm. And then I look back at it now and I'm like, holy crap, like it really happened. And I remember writing those letters and not even really thinking that things were going to change. I had no idea, because I knew that I had to get out and I had to deal with stuff on my own. Then I had all this probation, and I had to battle for the next 5 years of not failing a drug test. Because the judge was like, he said, if I see you in my courtroom again, you're going to be sharing a cell with Bubba. And I knew I wouldn't last long with
Bubba's
Bubba.
Not Eric.
No. No. So, and then a couple of days before I got out, there was a lot of emotions between me and Eric. 'Cause I was like, what am I going to do without you? He's like, you'll be fine. He's like, I said, how can I ever pay you back? Right. And he said, just keep paying it forward, keep helping other people, and keep doing you. And he gave me like a foundation. He gave me a workout plan that I still have framed in my place today. So I never forget where I came from. That has like some of the original stuff he told me to do, whether it was like 5 or 6 sets of push-ups one day, and the next day it was running 3 to 5 miles. But he had some words on there. He said, remember, you're no longer a fat ass again, and never have to be one again. Like, eat smart. Like, I'm not there. It's up to you. And
is he still in jail?
I don't know where he's at now. I mean, him and I, we actually worked out together a few times when he got out. But I don't know I know he was kind of still in and out of some stuff. I don't know where he was, but I dedicated my first book to him. If he ever called me, I would pick up the phone. And I remember writing him a letter when I first got out, and I lived with my grandparents, and it was so cold. It was like, in January, and I wrote him a letter. I was like, it's cold out. I can't run outside. He's like, I train machines, not pussies. He said that to me in a letter or something like that.
I like that he still thinks he's your trainer.
Yeah. He was like, you better go out and buy a pair of sweatpants. And those kind of words don't speak to everybody, and I get that, but to me it did. Like, it was just what I needed to hear. And him being hard on me, and for some reason, just
being honest, like you're a fat ass, dude.
Yeah,
you're fat. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want from me?
Yeah, he was like, and I was wondering why can't I do it? Like, why can't? He's like, you're fat. Like, you have a load of fat. You have no core strength. He's like, and like a lot of the lessons he taught me, and a lot of about not giving up on myself and helping other people and unconditional love were things I still carry on with me today that have kind of really influenced my recovery and my relationships with other people.
Uh-huh. So you get released. You're a felon,
right?
You're a young guy. You got your whole life ahead of you.
Yeah.
But it's got to be disorienting and confusing. Like, what am I gonna do now?
Yeah, I mean, I still had a lot of my same friends, and not that they were bad people, but I couldn't jive with that lifestyle anymore.
Yeah.
And so I lived with my grandparents, and they gave me the rules of, you're going to stay here. You can stay here rent free. We'll buy you your food. We'll give you money to go, do whatever, as long as we have receipts for what you're doing. And then you gotta, clean up after yourself and have a job. But if the minute you don't follow those rules, you're out, which is what I needed. And so I kept, obviously, after my cellmate's first letter, I began to run. I got myself some sweatpants. I would work out in their basement doing push-ups and jumping jacks and whatever else was part of the routine he gave me. And then when I built enough confidence in myself, I joined like a local Planet Fitness, but I had to look for a job because I had like 20 jobs by the time I went into jail. Like, I worked at restaurants, delivering pizza. I had quite the resume of somebody you don't want to hire, because I lasted like a few months at each job, right, where I'd be like, I can make $7 an hour or go sell drugs. And ironically, after banging on the doors for months, checking the box that I'm a convicted felon, I got hired at a liquor store. Uh-huh. So to me, I was like, well, this is either going to make me want to like drink like crazy, or it's going to make me not want to drink hardly at all. And it really it showed me like, obviously, the other lifestyle that I had never really seen. I'd never really seen people like banging on the doors before a liquor store opened to get alcohol. Yeah. I'd never seen that. because alcohol was never my thing. It was just, I didn't even like the taste of it really. I mean, I couldn't even drink beer. It was kind of gross. And so I worked there, and while most would say it's a horrible decision, I mean, they gave me a chance. I was open with them about my felony. I showed up to work every day. I just took that as an opportunity of gratitude for somebody giving me a chance. I continued to work. I made time to work out, whether it was before I went to work, after I went to work. So I was working 40 hours a week, and I just built some great relationships with the people I worked with, and ended up lasting about a year. It was weird, Rich. Like my whole outlook on work changed. Like every time I was going to work before I went to jail, it was like, I can't wait to leave. Like I cannot wait to leave, or I don't want to be here anymore. But here I was like, I just had this different mentality of like, all right, I'm here to work. I got to do my job. And then when I'm done, I can leave. And I don't know what changed, but I guess it was the combination of me feeling better about myself, and also the fact that I had a new lifestyle that I thought I was embracing. And, within a few months after getting released, after I got the job, like Saturday nights became watching Food Network with my grandparents.
Right. There's that thing when you're in the throes of addiction. I went through a lot of this where it's like you feel trapped. Like if you're in a job, you're like a caged animal. And
right.
You just can't wait to leave, because when you leave, then you can go use.
Right.
And then when you're sober, that gets taken away, and you have this mindset shift of that goes from like what can I what's the maximum that I can extract out of this experience for
right.
myself in a very selfish way, to what can I contribute?
Right.
And the more you get into that kind of service-oriented contribution mindset, then shockingly, the more gratifying the experience is, and the less you feel like a caged animal who wants to leave.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was more like, you said, like, how much am I getting paid for this job? Like, when can I come? When can I leave? How can I try and score drugs on my lunch break? I mean, I was working at a car wash, having people stop through to buy drugs from me while I was working, to now, being...
That's some hustle.
That's some dumb hustle. Because this guy, my boss at the time came up to me. He's like, man, you realize this guy accused me of like... of taking a pound of weed out of his car. He's like, a pound, you know how much that is? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like thinking to myself, I have one in my trunk right now. Wow. But still working at the liquor store, I was able to just, people were starting to notice, like, to respond to me differently. They're like, wow, you're so passionate, you're so happy. And it was just a complete shift in mindset. And I guess the help of me exercising just made it all better. Yeah.
So why did you not go to try to find community in AA or in 12-step?
I mean, I did go to one NA meeting when I was in jail, but just to solely get out of my jail cell. It wasn't like I wanted to do anything with it. I don't know. I didn't know anybody who went to AA. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like, I didn't really know anybody. So I kind of just thought, okay, I'm going to work out, I'm going to run, I'm going to eat better. And if I can lose weight and feel better about myself, that'll make me not want to like mask my insecurities with drugs anymore. And if I can just follow the rules of my grandparents said in the job I currently had in probation, that I wouldn't mess up anymore. So it wasn't that I didn't want, it was never really in front of me. Like, I went to there was like mandatory outpatient classes I went to for like, I don't know, it was like 8 weeks, once a week or something, ready to pee in a cup.
Those are super depressing though.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, there was that.
Well, that's the weird thing with NA and 12-step, that, the anonymity is part of the whole deal, right? So with that, I mean, there's benefits and advantages to that, because if you're in there, you have, you can remain anonymous, but at the same time, it prevents the program from being known to somebody like yourself,
right?
Who's like, well, I don't know anyone there, and I don't even know where it is, and and then you're just left to your own imagination about how horrible it probably is, and then you never go.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have anybody I knew. I mean, I knew a few people that had tried to get sober and whatnot, but like, I really didn't know. I didn't know anybody. Yeah. Like, I didn't know. Like, and so I just kind of kept on the path of running and then working out, which worked. I mean, my personality changed, my outlook on life changed, my passion for wanting to help other people was like greater than ever. And then it led me to wanting to become a trainer about a year and a half later, to help other people, use fitness to change their lives in the way that it changed mine.
So it's been a little over a year, 10 or 11 years at this point?
Yeah. I mean, I went to jail, October 21st, 2008. I got released December 26th, 2008. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been almost, over 10 years. I mean, I've had...
went to jail on the day after my birthday.
Yeah, that's right, because you're a Libra too, right?
October 20th.
Yeah, my birthday is the 13th.
Oh, it is? Wow.
Yeah.
So a week after your birthday.
It's like my 21st birthday.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like celebratory.
And never haven't had a relapse?
No, I mean, I've had some like drinks here and like a glass of wine here, a glass of wine. Because, to me, like, and again, I didn't get involved in that 12-step community. I know in the 12-step community, it's, complete total abstinence. So my understanding was as long as I'm not doing the drugs I was abusing, like opiates and coke and pot, that I was good. And I never had honestly, I could have a glass of wine and I might not drink for 2 years. I mean, there's been times I haven't drank for years and I just can take it or leave it. And, I had a friend tell me who's in recovery say sometimes kids, when they get sober at a young age, they're able later in life to experience alcohol. In some cases, drink here and nor there. And again, I don't know if it works.
Yeah, that's dangerous for me.
Yeah, no, I know.
There's a joke that I have with some of my friends, some of which, like, I have friends that are like 35 years sober. They're like my age or in their 40s. They got sober super young, and it's like, and I always joke with them, you could probably drink now. It'll be fine, And they laugh because they know, like, in their heart of hearts, they know, like, they can't do that. If they do it, it's like game over. Like, anything can happen. Whatever. Yeah. So certain people are wired that way. I mean, alcohol wasn't your drug of choice. It wasn't the entry for you to other things. And, I can't speak for anybody other than my own experience. I know for myself, like, that option is off the table for me. But God bless you, man.
Well, and I think it's like, I look at why. If I come home and I'm like stressed and I'm start drinking, like I've never really gotten to that. It's more like if I'm out like on a date or if I'm out like social, like something like social. Which, I honestly don't do it that. I could probably count the amount of drinks I've had on my one hand in the last few years. It's just, but when I'm very open about it. And unless like, one of my clients was a treatment center and I would train the patients there. It was a 12-step program. And, I would never be open about that with them unless, if they asked me, I wouldn't lie, but I didn't want people getting the idea that they can do that too, because my walk is my walk.
Right.
I just have built in different ways to manage my stress today than I did back then. And, if it ever became an issue, then I would have to look at what I'm doing. But right now it's, it works for the time being.
So what are the ways in which you manage your stress outside of just working out?
Well, I think, spirituality has been big for me. I'm a Christian. I don't jam it down people's throats because I didn't like it being jammed down my throat. And, I didn't always believe in God because I was like, if God's real and God's about love, why am I incarcerated? Why am I addicted to drugs? Why this? Why that? Why me? Why me? And I didn't believe but then I hit that point, several years into my recovery where I thought just working out, making good money would be sustainably happy. And you surely get humbled at like, and then one of my mentors, Todd Durkin, who's a trainer in San Diego, was like, Doug, you need like some spirituality and like whatever works for you, right? And so one of my clients was a pastor, and he's like, you're gonna start coming to church with me. It's a non-denominational. It's like, dude, I'm on the highway to hell. I'm going through hell for putting you through this workout, and there's no way. And finally I hit that point where I needed that calling, and I went and called my client. I was like, I need to like come to church, and that was almost 5 years ago. And
but what was that moment? Like, why then? Like, what was going on?
I just had gotten, nothing was work. Like nothing in my personal life was like working as far as like female relationships, and I was just having a lot of doubts about myself, a lot of like, resentments towards like the choices I had made, and being a former convicted felon, and all this stuff that I just couldn't deal with, and and then also like the part of me was like kept looking back and being like, man, like I have this crazy story that people tell me, like I couldn't have done it myself. Like, and so I came back from Disney World from a business retreat, and I remember just crying at the retreat because I was at a fitness retreat. We focused on like personal and business development, and I couldn't like wrap my head around why I was like super fit, making good money and why I still wasn't completely happy. And then the spirituality nudge kept coming from some of my peers and I just thought I should I got nothing to lose. I'll try it. And like when I went to the church for the first time and like prayed with my client, the same same monkey that came off my back with the pot, the opiates, and then like the fitness part came off my back in a deeper level, like that I can't even explain. Like I called my mom like for the first time like ever, like, and authentically apologized to her when I walked out of there. And I felt like there was a bigger reason for me to be alive. And at this point I'm a trainer. So I'm like, you can't make up that fitness saved like I used fitness to help save my life in jail. And now I'm helping other people use fitness to save their lives. I was like, I can't do that myself. And I slowly began to think like, I might not be happy with the choices that I made, but God was. And for me, it works. And it really helped me. And then, if you want to dive into that a little bit more, we can. But I think also having mentors in my life, people that have walked the walk a bit deeper. I started getting involved in like mastermind programs and personal development stuff when I was like 22 years old.
So who were your guys in that regard?
I mean, like Todd Durkin, the guy in San Diego. And I started following like Gary Vee, who I actually got to meet Gary for the first time like a few weeks ago. I was up at VaynerMedia. And
you were? Cool.
Yeah, for an interview on one of his podcasts. Not his, but like his new lifestyle brand, 1:37 p.m.
1:37.
And I was like wondering. I was like asking the guy who was in. I was like, "Is Gary here?" I was like, "I would love them. Like, I love Gary." Like, I was like, I just love. And he's like, "I don't know." He's always running around. And I literally like go in the bathroom, washing my hands, and you know how Gary's got that distinct voice. And I'm like, "Gary V." I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I go like shake his hand. Like, we're in the bathroom, and he's like, "I'm like, can we please get a picture together?" And I was like, and then he started talking to me, and it was really cool. Like that. A guy like him, who obviously I'm sure gets bothered by tons of people, was super authentic when I saw him like in his realm.
He's exactly who you want him to be when the camera's not on. Like my experience with him is super positive, and every time I've bumped into him or seen him, he could not be nicer or more kind or more generous. Like everything that he preaches, he practices in his own life.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see that, with him, because sometimes you meet some of these guys, and they're like totally different and totally turns you off. And then obviously following like guys like Tony Robbins and I'm trying to think of who else. When I really first got into recovery, I started reading like fitness magazines too, which helped me like figure out how to eat. And even though now I look back, I can't believe I read some of the stuff like Muscle and Fitness, or Arnold Schwarzenegger's like Book of Bodybuilding was like the first book I read. But and also a lot of my clients were either like lawyers or they were like CPAs or financial planners, and they were all like pretty successful. So I was always like picking their brain and be like, well, how did you do it? And I was always like a listener and absorbed information. And I just always knew that I never had the answer. And if I was the smartest person in the room, I needed to get into different rooms. And so I don't know, I got really, I guess, lucky in the sense that I just jumped on these opportunities to meet people and network and just be like, hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Like, and just see where stuff leads.
Well, it sounds like you had a willingness to grow and to learn and to expand, and you sought out these people, whether virtually or in person, for guidance and counsel that you clearly, lacked in your own life. And at the same time, you invested in, a spiritual program for yourself. And I would imagine you probably look back on that jail experience now and everything that you endured to get to where you are at this point with a level of gratitude that you didn't expect to have, right?
Well, yeah. If you would ask me now if I would have cried when I left jail, there was been like maybe in joy, but I was cried of like, I was nervous because I didn't want to leave. And I needed that experience. I needed that. And I don't know where my spiritual awakening actually was. I know I've probably had several in my life. But being in jail was definitely the big one, because all the masks I've been putting on myself came off at once. And it was like, okay, Doug, here you are. You're a fat ass. You've gotten yourself in jail. You can't do what you want, see what you want, go where you want or talk to who you want. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm. What was your greatest aspiration for your life when you were driving around, scamming French fries and delivering pizzas and just getting stoned?
I really wanted to be like either in the like I wanted to either be in the FBI or be like a sports broadcaster for ESPN, and that was, but those were two of my things. And I went from I wanted to obviously be a lawyer, an accountant, but and then I narrowed it down. I wanted to be in the FBI and or be on ESPN. And obviously, when I got arrested, I was like, well, there goes the FBI.
No FBI, unless you're going to be some kind of informant, off the books.
Yeah, actually, I didn't want to be doing that either.
It's funny though, because 10 years might seem like a long time, but it's actually not that long. And when I think of you kind of driving around with one headlight, just a disaster, to like being on the Today Show and like going to VaynerMedia, like you've got a lot of press for the stuff that you've done. Like you're kind of a name who's out there, who's learned how to own your story and tell it in a certain way. And clearly for the sake of inspiring other people and motivating other people to take better control of their lives. I mean, in a certain respect, you're becoming that that lighthouse and that beacon of light for people that you sought out in your own time of need.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to help people. I mean, I don't have any like other mission behind it, and it's like I just really want to use my story. There's bits and pieces that can relate, whether it's how you struggle with mental illness and how you cope with that, or whether it's, a mom listening who's got a kid right now who just started smoking pot and like, well, what do I do? Because, my kid's telling me pot's legal here. And, and I see him like not doing his homework for 3 weeks in a row. Or if it's just somebody who like doesn't think they can ever get started in taking care of their body. Like I was that person. Like I was the guy, I wasn't yo-yo dieting, but I would like eat like once a day and it would be like a whole cheesesteak, pizza and fries. And I thought that was like cool. Like that was like delicious. And then like, as I look back now and as I've experienced with almost every, diet, I don't really like that word, but lifestyle, I'm like, wow, well, it's just funny how cheesesteaks and pizza aren't part of any of these other, equations when it comes to how to eat.
Yeah. What's interesting about your story is it's like the intersection of so many things that are like gone off the rails in our society, from our obsession with success and comfort and luxury. Like, a good life is a life of, getting a good paycheck and having a nice car and having a job that people approve of. You kind of playing that out on some level and seeing like, I'm not happy with that, to this, mental health crisis that we find ourselves in, where more people are depressed or suffering from some form of anxiety or, suicidal ideation or PTSD or what have you. I mean, it's flagrant, and everywhere we look, to the opioid crisis, to, all of these problems that we're kind of suffering from culturally. You're like this, test tube case study, who kind of came out the other side, but can speak to all of these issues as somebody who's endured them.
Yeah. And it's been tough. To say that it's been an easy road. The amount of energy it's probably taken just to kind of maintain all this, it's hard because, I'm so used to, having to always watch my back. Being on like probation for 5 years, it was definitely tough, and not failing drug tests and having the felony come off my record was great. But having that like on your shoulders, like it correlates into like for you to watch your back in other areas of your life. And but if I can just be a beacon or an inspiration of hope to people that hear my story and that know that like I'm just here to help people. It's not like I'm trying to sell any programs. I'm honestly like floating my own bill, paying for all the stuff myself to travel, just to help other people. Like that's what it's about for me. It's just about, if I can, the emails I get or the texts I get from people who see this or listen to that, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I needed this right now. Like I needed to hear your story. And to me, that's what life's about. It's paying it forward.
What do you think is the difference between your experience and the experience of the untold thousands of other oxy addicts out there who get pulled over and arrested and go to jail and never change their ways? Like, why were you able to, grab onto this lifeline and make these changes to become this person who's like writing books and, doing podcasts and, like it's an amazing trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, other than right place, right time. I mean, and as I look back, I mean, one of my biggest motivators for believing in God wasn't like seeing this person, right? It was just looking at where my life was to where it is now and being like, I can't do that myself. And the moment I try to say that I did this myself is the moment I lose, because then ego is the enemy, right? Ego is one. And I think it also came back to taking responsibility. I mean, like I said, my cellmate being really point blank to me, like doesn't resonate in the way it does might not resonate with many, but he said to me, he's like, you can be a man or you can be a bitch. That's what he said to me when I got in there. And he's like, you can be a man and take responsibility for yourself. Know that you got yourself here. No matter who you want to blame, no matter who did this, you got yourself here. And it's up to you to change. Or you can be a bitch and go cry in the corner, sulk in your sorrows and blame everybody else like most people will do. And I just kind of took that and I don't want to say ran with it, but I just kind of did it. And I was just on such a mission to never, give up, and to know that life was going to be better for me if I did these things. And if I didn't do these things, I was going to fail. And I had no shot at all. But I knew if I did these things, I had a shot. And slowly, it was like things started to fall into place. And I mean, I think I got lucky in a way, but I think I was just so determined, Rich, to change. I really was.
Well, divine providence placed this guy, Eric, in your path, you know, and I would imagine you look at that with a sense of not just gratitude, but in a way that instills your life with faith, because you couldn't have predicted that. That changes the course. I mean, had that guy not been there and it had just been a bunch of dudes who couldn't care less about you, like where would your life be right now? I mean, you couldn't even imagine, right?
I mean, I wouldn't have been working out for sure.
Yeah. So, what is that if not, I choose, I guess I could say, I choose to look at that as, an act of God. It doesn't have to be, the word God can be replaced for whatever spiritual turn of phrase feels comfortable for you. But there's so much beauty and poetry and elegance in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just, no matter what spirituality you believe in, if you believe in it or not, to me, it was just his willingness to help me with no strings attached, unconditional love, right? And then paying it forward, and then he was like an angel to me at that time when I needed him, and him not letting me give up, because he could have easily been like, dude, you're a pain in my ass. You bitch way too much. You whine. Like, get away from me. Right. Like, why am I going to waste my time? But he didn't let me quit. And even when I got out of jail, I mean, he didn't have to write me back, but he did. And, once I was trying to bail out in a way, he was like, what the heck did I teach you when you were incarcerated? Like, go get yourself a pair of sweatpants and stop being a wuss. And so like that kind of like just that unconditional love, I didn't want to let that guy down, because I was like, I don't know why, but I was like, if I let this guy down, like my life's over, because like I have this golden opportunity. And when the felony came off, I just, everyone was like, I remember people in court crying, and I'm just standing there. I didn't really understand what had really happened. I mean, it was so euphoric, but I mean, it was cool to be able to go back to court to see the judge and him look at me in a positive way, and see the judicial system, which many of us have come to hate when it comes to the way people treat drug offenders, to actually do some good for once.
Yeah, this is something that John McAvoy talks about a lot, the redemptive power of sport. And he's essentially devoted a huge part of his life to trying to reform the prison system, to instill it with sports-related activities and programs to rehabilitate the population. And you're, a similar example of that rehabilitative power of taking control of your fitness. Yeah,
I mean, it's just so important for the mind. I mean, just to feel better about yourself, and having that dedication and knowing, okay, I got to do this activity at 7 a.m., whether it's working out or going outside and playing basketball. And then like the endorphin rush that you get, and just being able to like get uncomfortable or get comfortable being uncomfortable, which in recovery, it's uncomfortable a lot of times, right? You lose a job, you get a divorce, you get somebody who chastises you on social media, whatever it is that makes you uncomfortable, you got to deal with it in a healthy way,
well,
right?
The first part of getting sober is the experience of being about as uncomfortable as you can possibly be,
right.
like weathering a detox. And what you learn from that is that you can't short circuit it. Like, no. I'm sure if they'd allowed you to get the Suboxone in there, it might have been a little bit easier. But if it was too easy, maybe you would have gone back. You know what I mean? There's beauty in that suffering, because with that comes the lesson. And if you try to short circuit that, you're missing out on what is trying to be taught to you, right? And I think when you can appreciate the difficulty of weathering an experience like that, it allows you to see that those experiences are necessary in order to grow. And ultimately, they provide the foundation for you to be a happier, more purposeful person.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly kind of what it did for me, is like getting into recovery, starting to work out got me uncomfortable, but it also led me into meeting other people along the way, and then meeting people that challenged me to write books. I mean, I didn't want to write my first book, but people were like, you got this crazy story, why don't you write a book? And I was like, I barely graduated high school. Like, what do I know about writing? And then and then I went to write it, and then I wrote it, and then people were like, oh, this is pretty good. And I'm like, oh, is it? Like, and then that led me to meet some other people and challenge myself more, and then be inspired to write this next book, where my newest book that comes out in March,
right,
to really help other people. And I've just met so many cool people, and just following people along the way that just inspire the heck out of me with their recovery. And reading your book was awesome, and there was a lot of things I related to there with what happened to you in school, and then obviously with getting sober, and then the role fitness played in your life. And to be honest, it was funny.
And I delivered pizza too in Maryland.
It's funny is you were doing that. I was reading about you doing the Epic 5, and that point where you blacked out and you didn't remember, and you didn't know if you were going to go on. And then Jason was like, come on, we're running this marathon. I was hiking up. I've never really hiked a mountain before. And the other day I was in Arizona with my buddy. Was it Thursday or Friday? We were hiking, and I was smoked. And then in my mind, I was just thinking about you and the Epic 5. I'm like, dude, I'm a complete wuss right now compared to what Rich was doing.
Got you up the hill.
Yeah, got me up the hill.
Awesome. So tell me about the new book, The Heart of Recovery. So this comes out in March, and these are sort of case studies of interviewing a bunch of people who've turned their lives around in sobriety.
Yeah, so I mean, being somebody who's been in recovery for a little over a decade, I got into the point where I was people were like, oh, how'd you get sober without going to AA? And I was like, well, I did this, and that. And, I just, I was, I knew that I had a problem with the drugs I was abusing. I couldn't do it. I knew I believed in God, and I had made amends for them. I don't have any anger towards my family, but I'd communicated with them, and I have, people I call when I'm in trouble, sponsors, if you will. And so I just knew I was doing very similar things, and I just saw the epidemic obviously not getting any better, and realizing that people getting into recovery, they're not healthy. There are people that are still smoking tons of cigarettes, they're eating unhealthy, and I'm like, how can I correlate a message to help people get better? So I decided that I wanted to write an interview style book where I interviewed 50 of some of the most inspiring people that are in recovery about how they did it, what their workout routines were what kind of people they hung out with, what their view on spirituality was, and almost what they do on a day-to-day basis to thrive in recovery. And I wanted a vast, diverse group of people, from people who are celebrities to people who aren't, to people, just to show that whether you're worth $50 million or $50, recovery and addiction doesn't discriminate. You still gotta work a program, but just work what works for you. And while there's a lot of people in there that are 12-step people, and it's definitely worked for them, there's people in there that aren't, and it's worked for them. And, I just think we kind of need to stop thinking it's a one-size-fits-all approach, because, I think if it was, I think we wouldn't be where we're at today. I mean, there's so many other issues that go into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're the fact that the two of us are sitting here, who both have leveraged fitness for personal growth in our own unique ways. We've also had different paths in sobriety, and like I have no judgment on how you got sober and stay sober. My path's a little bit different, but I think it does speak to the fact that, like, yeah, I mean, I know it works for me, but that doesn't mean it's a one size fits all thing. And I appreciate the fact that you would, like, kind of create a catalog of all these different perspectives for somebody to be able to turn to and find, of all of these, here's the one that I can identify with. So maybe I'll model my path after this person.
Yeah, and there's different stories in there. There's some names people recognize, some don't. But I think it's like I really wanted to include a lot of names that people don't recognize, because those are the names that don't really get talked about. And, just different people's perspectives on their workout routines to their views on spiritual. They're all different. And all the personalities are different, just so people can pick and choose what they want to nibble on. And, like, it's laid out so people can just read a story at a time. There's a table of contents that helps people kind of journal through. I mean, there's some really funny stories in there, and you read about some people that you're like, man, how the heck did they get through it? And I met some amazing people along the way, and just connected with some really cool people that I still have relationships with now, just because I was like, it was weird, like reaching out to the publicists, and man, I had no experience of doing it all, like none. They're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Doug Bopst, I'm a trainer in Maryland. They're like, why are you calling? Yeah. And I'm like, I'm writing a book, and they're like, well, who's your publisher? And I'm like, I just wanted to write the book. And I was just like, I had to seriously hustle like crazy to get this done, because nobody knew me. And I didn't have I'm self-publishing. I didn't have a big publisher, but I just knew that I wanted to write the book, and I wanted to help people. And I think there's a lot of people that just respected that I was nobody, and like, wow, you're doing this on like your own time. I'm not affiliated with it. I'm not working for a treatment center. I don't, this is just me.
I'm just paging through the book.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in here that I know. Yeah. Not everyone. I mean, some of these names I don't know, but there's like, some of it is like, oh, this is a little bit of a who's who of LAAA. Like some of the names in here. I was like, oh, Amy must have turned you on to that person.
Well, I mean, there were certain people they were like, how can I help you? I was like, and I would be honest. I'd be like, I mean, if you know anybody who would be able to open, they would do it. That's not going to like ask me a million questions. It's like that's going to be open to the 11th tradition, which I know is big in LA. I said, just turn me to them, and I was thankful that a lot of people helped me out, and I also just was persistent, like, because I knew people were busy, and once I got somebody on the phone, it was a little easier because I could hear my voice. I would share my story, and it wasn't like I was just that other person like reaching out to them for something. It was like, okay, like it seems legitimate what you want to do, because at first I wanted to get as many celebrities as I could, and then I realized like, A, it's really, really hard, me being nobody, and B, like I wanted to get like a lot of stories in there too that nobody knows, because those are the stories that people can like everyday people can. They're not going to be able to relate to people who can afford to put themselves to rehab a bunch, or I mean, they can in some ways, but it's the everyday person that's working like 2 jobs and has kids that can't get through it.
What did you learn from this experience? What's surprising? What surprised you?
I mean, I just think that, Rich, there's a lot of different themes in there. There's a lot of different paths, but there's a lot of commonalities too. I mean, the people in there, for the most part, I'd say all, they all like, the relationships change for the better when they got into recovery. They hang out with people that bring the best out in them. They have a workout routine that works for them, or if they're not currently working out because of injury or something, they know the importance of it. They value it, and they all like kind of know what they need to do every day to kind of stay on top of things, and they were all like really interesting to talk to. Like it was all like there were so many people just willing to do it because they wanted to be part of it. But and I also learned like how there's a lot of politics, I guess, in recovery too. And there's a lot of gatekeepers and certain things, which I wasn't aware of because I'm in the fitness industry. So that kind of was eye-opening to me, and I didn't know. And it was hard to fight through, but I guess I realized it's just what it is. So, I mean, that was a big learning experience, was like, just because you're calling a manager or a publicist of somebody doesn't mean they're going to give you an interview. Right. It's really hard, and a lot of people want these interviews, and I didn't know because I'd never been through this process before. All I knew was fitness. I mean, I didn't know I mean, but by the grace of God, I was able to get some of the interviews I got in there just by help of other people. And, you know, some I got on my own through publicists, but it was tough.
Well, one thing I'm pretty sure nobody said to you is this. When I got sober, I thought that my life would be over and that it would just be boring from then on out. And they were right. It was boring.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, your life gets better.
It does.
You think that you're going to be resigned to this milquetoast existence and you know, there'll be no more high highs and low lows. And, you know, on some level, yes, of course, you're evening things out. But on the whole, like, I have been privy to witnessing lives so dramatically changed as a result of getting sober that it's almost beyond what is believable.
Yeah, I mean, lives definitely changed for the better. And for people, I mean, there's a lot of people, like we were saying, you know, earlier, that they're like, my life's not going to be any better, but it does get better. I mean, you are able to hold a job. Your relationships do improve. The way you feel about yourself is better because you don't have that like weight weighing you down anymore. And I think, you know, you are able to do some work on yourself. Like getting into recovery is like a huge step in working on yourself, which a lot of people don't really do anymore, whether they're in recovery or not. And I think, you know, just showing that you actually love yourself enough to take a chance, put the drugs down, put the alcohol down, and try to work something that will help you lead you in the right direction, you know? With
the clients that you work with, what's the difference between those that actually make strides and those that don't?
I think the ones that really make the strides are the ones that like are just so like persistent and dedicated, and they put it in their schedule as like an appointment. Like it's like it's like part of their day. Like they know it's like a doctor's appointment. They're not missing a workout, and they're just wired that way. They're driven, and they have seen. I mean, I think a lot of it just like in recovery, like when you're training somebody, like when you start to see some success, it snowballs and helps you really keep your eye on the prize and keep going towards the bigger goals. And, you know, the ones, they don't give up. It's the sheer determination and that will to win and just, you know, follow instructions. And if I say, hey, you know, don't eat this or lay off this, or, hey, you got to exercise 3 to 4 times a week, the people that do that, it works. Like, and the people that don't, it doesn't. I mean, it's just,
come on. There's got to be a better answer than that.
No, I know, you know, and you know what I mean? Like people always, they want like a magic pill or this. I'm like, listen, like if you do what I say and you work out 3 to 5 times a week and you keep your calories in check, I mean, you will lose weight. Like that's just, I mean, unless you have some, you know, metabolic disease or diabetes, whatever, something that's uncontrollable. But for the most general population, you will. I mean,
yeah. All right, so I'm at home in my mom's basement. I'm listening to this podcast. I'm smoking too many blunts. I'm hitting, you know, Wendy's a little too often. I know I need to like work out a little bit. Maybe I should lay off the weed and maybe not go out with my buddies so much. But like, I don't know, man. It's not that bad. Like, how do you connect with that person? Like, how do you jumpstart somebody who's kind of in that place where, yeah, it's not going in a good direction, but they're not like going to jail.
Right.
You know, they're not getting pulled over with one headlight. It hasn't hit a flashpoint in that way. But this is a person who, you know, could benefit from making a few lifestyle changes.
I mean, I think it's just asking them some questions, asking them, are you happy with the way your life is? And like, honestly, are you happy? Like, and then, you know, some people will be like, yeah, I'm happy. I'm like, so you're telling me sitting in your mom's basement when you're 35 years old, smoking blunts, you know, listening to Tupac and eating cheeseburgers makes you happy every day? Which there's nothing wrong with Tupac, by the way. But, and then like, you just start to unlayer things, right? And then like, you're able to ask them some tough questions. And again, you got to build I build a relationship with some of these people that you talk to. I mean, you can't just walk in and say stuff like that, but you just kind of come at them from a loving place and just show that you authentically care and be like, well, you know, what if I told you that if we went for a 20-minute walk that you might feel a little bit better? And then you just kind of like, they might be like, nah, I'm not going to feel it. I'm like, why don't you just try it? Like, what do you have to lose, right? And they try it, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to feel better, right? As long as they, you know, don't have any injuries or anything. And then you just kind of build steps off of that. I mean, I think it's just like, you know, the 12 steps, right? You just accomplish one thing and then you just keep going and keep layering things on top of it.
Momentum is so important.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times these kids or people who, however old they are, that they just don't know any other way. So like they've been taught that whatever way they're doing is the only way, whether it's their friends around them, whether it's what they listen to or what they watch, and just being able to show them there is another path. And whatever that path looks like, I mean, it's got to come out of like love and care. You don't want to, I would never go in and just start talking down to a kid, but I would definitely ask him some tough questions because it allows him to have some open dialogue, to be able to answer in an honest way, hopefully, on how he feels about his life. And, you know, because you start to get into, to unwrap, peel the onion back a little bit. And then sure enough, a kid tells you, oh man, I'm really not happy. Like, you know, tell you the truth. Like I broke up with my girlfriend a year ago and I haven't been able to, you know, get over it. And I've been in my parents' basement because I lost my job 6 months ago and I can't afford to eat healthy. So I eat Wendy's and I smoke weed because I don't want to kill myself. I mean, you hear some deep stuff sometimes when you peel the onion back. It's not always what it appears. And that's why I say go in and you just ask some tough questions. And hopefully if they're at a spot where they're willing to answer, you can really get some work done.
Yeah, lead with empathy. And it's, you know, you coming from where you've come from, you can create that bridge probably a lot easier than most people.
Well, yeah, being able to relate to them. I mean, relatability is the spice of life, I think, and on many things, if not all. And just being able to be like, listen, like, I mean, I also would just say, like, listen, if you think I don't know everything, but I know some things, and I know I get where you're at. I know I was the kid who was suicidal, was hopeless, was slinging drugs, you know, left and right, and eating, you know, fast food all the time. And I had no hope. But if it wasn't for somebody helping me, you know, find a new path, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm just trying to do the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the person who's willing to help, but it's also timing.
Yeah.
You know, that person showed up at a moment where you actually had the willingness to, you know, take the lifeline. Had that guy come across your path a year earlier, you might have told him to fuck off.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it goes back to that kind of divine providence.
Yeah, and timing is everything. And so I just, you know, and I think that my cellmate, he didn't come at me like, you need to change. He was just like, come on, like, he just kept nudging me, kept like tapping me on the shoulder. Kind of like my client who wanted me to come to church. He wasn't like, you need to come to church, you're going to hell. He was like, you know, if you want to come to church, you're more than welcome. We can go to Chipotle afterwards. I was like, I don't want to eat Chipotle, but, and then, you know, he just kept being like, are you sure? Are you sure? And then finally, when I was ready, he hadn't pushed me away. He just gently tapped me that I was able to be like, all right, well, let me try this thing out. And that's the same way with a lot of these kids. Like, I don't lead with, you better stop doing drugs. I lead with questions, and I lead with, you know, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not your father, but this is my story, and I was your age not long ago, and I'm here to tell you that there's a better way out if you're willing to meet me there.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the thing that holds most people back?
I mean, I think there's many, but I think one is just they just don't believe in themselves, and when stuff gets hard, they quit because life does get hard. I mean, for me to say life gets easy when you stop using drugs is it just couldn't be far from the truth. But you know, they just don't see a better way, and when they want to get better, and then you know the slightest thing will happen, and they'll be like, oh fuck this, like my life's not better, like I've stopped using drugs only 2 days, you know, and they want everything to happen like right now. And then you know also just like their environment. I think kids, like I was saying earlier, part of the problem is the pot, right? I think in a lot of cases, right? In many, but also the like environment of like, that's what all you do is ride around and smoke pot with your friends is like a huge problem, because then like you're leaving your community, right? We talked about the importance of community, and then you're all of a sudden being forced to leave that community and go somewhere else, where kids now, being in the age of social media where we've, you know, the ability of having face-to-face interaction is slowly fading, it's hard for them to meet new friends. So it's better in their minds to go back and hang out with the same friends and try to maybe not smoke pot. But of course, we know that if you do that long enough, the odds are against you that you'll stay away from it. And
it's hard. It's hard to be 15, 16, 17 years old. You know, and when you create community around something like smoking pot, It's tough to break out of that. Your social life is everything. And, in a social media culture where everyone's being judged, behind their back and to their face, through Instagram and Snapchat and the like, the levels of anxiety and stress that people in this age bracket are experiencing, I think, are unprecedented. And I think that's contributing to more and more checking out and drug use.
I watched Simon Sinek was on Tom Bilyeu's Impact Theory or Health Theory years ago, talking about giving the kid a cell phone at a young age. Was like, I think he compared it to alcohol or something, but he was just saying how kids can if they're depressed, they can just check out and go to their phones, right? And I think we're seeing that a lot now with kids on Snapchat and Instagram, and in a matter of seconds, kids can get jealous, envious, competitive, comparative, however you want to call it, by just pulling out their phone, looking on Instagram.
So can adults.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I know. Yeah. But, and so you can just see like, wow, that person has a better body, or man, that person just bought a jet or a new car. Or
all those people that I thought were my friends are now at a party that I'm not at.
Right.
And they told me they were doing something else.
Right. Yeah. And that's hard for kids. And that's like a way of like, one of my clients is telling me like a way of bullying now is for that to happen. That very reason they put a picture up of all these kids and they don't tag the one person who wasn't there or, what in the picture, and the kid sees it and they're like, what the heck? And it's for everybody to see. And as much as technology is great, and I think it can be an awesome tool. I think so many people, like you said, we use it as ways to compete with people. And, but I think there's obviously a silver lining in everything. And that's why there's people, like you and others that, have a strong influence and are able to be authentic and genuine and show how you can use social media in a positive way and not in a way to tear other people down and bully people or, be a snake oil salesman, which there's a lot of that too, right?
Yeah, and it's hard to divine, fact from fiction and kind of find your true north through all of this. And when you're young and impressionable and insecure and afraid, you're cannon fodder for being manipulated and all the sort of darker sides of what social media is presenting right now.
Yeah, and you just don't know where it's going to head, and you don't know what angle it's going to take. But it's not. I don't think it's going away. So how can kids and adults and everybody else affected by it, manage it? And I think it's the tools, because for people to say they're never going to check Instagram again or whatever, they're not telling the truth. At least I'm not.
It's part of our lives. And I think if you're a young person, the answer isn't no cell phone. Like, this is the vocabulary of how this generation communicates. Like, you can't deprive them of becoming, proficient in that language. But there has to be boundaries, and there has to be analog, experiences to counterbalance that, to craft a healthy sense of self-esteem and purpose. That isn't reliant upon the reactionary, proclivities of some, bunch of teenagers who are, all swirling with crazy hormones that are, making them do things that, when they're 30, they'll regret.
Yeah, and I just think it goes back to how are we dealing with the stressors and the thing that bug us out. If we get bugged out on Instagram or Facebook by something somebody says, something we saw, how can we manage that stress in a healthy way? And it's not, drugs and alcohol. It's, surrounding yourself with great people. It's having mentors, people you can lean on, and, working out and eating smart. And if you're kids, making sure that you're hanging out with people that have like common futures and not common past. That was one of the hard things for me. I was like, man, I've known X, Y, and Z people for so long, but it's like, do you want to be somebody who when you're 50 years old, looking back at your life, being like, man, I wish I would have changed my friends and taken more risks on myself. And here I am, like sitting at a bar by myself, just drinking because, I didn't really work on myself or change my environment. Or do you want to be that same person at 50 being like, man, I'm so thankful that, I did the hard thing. I sucked it up and stayed in on weekends for a little while until I built a new network of friends. And now here I am with a family and we're happy. And it's a lot easier said than done. But I mean, those are definitely two different paths. That
pay now, love it later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's tough in an instant gratification culture where everyone wants what they want immediately. And it doesn't work that way.
We all want it now. And it's like and it makes, in my job, my profession, people we want, I mean, I'm seeing it a lot with people with the calories. People are like, well, how many calories did I burn? And I'm like, well, there's a lot more that goes into exercise than just the calories. I mean, if you're strength training, it's, you know, the benefits will be a lot like longer endured than if there's just that single workout for calories. But it's because we have the access on our watches to see instantly, you know, what our heart rate is, how many calories we burn, you know, text messages. And so we've almost like correlated that in other areas of our lives too.
It's crazy, man. What are your buddies doing now? The ones that your ride or die buddies from back in the day?
I think, you know, some have cleaned up and there's some that haven't, you know, but
you've put it's not like they're still your inner circle.
No, not at all.
But you stayed in that in the same community.
Yeah. I mean, but I just had to shut it off. And there was for a while I would hang out with them, and it got to a point where I didn't have as much in common. Like I was about like eating like, you know, like boiled chicken and broccoli for dinner or something, just making that something like that, right? And they were, you know, getting ready to go to the bar. Or I wanted to be able to go for, you know, a run, and you know, so it just like I didn't align with them. Like before, it was like we all just did drugs together. Where now, or it came to the point where I was on a healthier lifestyle, and I wanted to help, you know, not only myself but be able to help other people. And I just had to start aligning myself with people that wanted that. And I started just reading, right? I started just reading books. And, you know, like the one guy I know who's been on here, whose books I loved, is John Gordon. I just started reading like, yeah.
He's the dude.
He's the man.
He's got lots of books.
Yeah.
He churns those things out like, I don't know how he does that, man.
But they're so small. I mean, but his books, like, they're simple. They were easy to read. So I started reading like, you know, stuff like that. And I started reading Gary Vee, we talked about. And you start to learn about either the type of person that you want to be, or the type of people you should be hanging out with, or how to treat people. And it was all kind of different than the drug culture I had immersed myself into, which was, you know, a bit more, you know, challenging for myself. And I commemorate like the people that did all that stuff, because they wrote those books, because personal development for me has been huge, and just being able to meet people and just like ask the right questions. And it's just been a huge help for me with everything in my life.
What's the main thing that you want people to take away from your story?
I mean, the main thing I tell people is to always focus on how far they've come and not how far they have to go. Because there was a lot of times where I wanted to quit, and I just remembered what Eric did for me in jail, the things he said to me. And I also remembered all the times I'd failed as a kid, all the times I was unhappy and stressed and depressed, and I didn't want to ever feel like that again. And I knew that if I went the other way, like if I went back to doing drugs or eating pizzas and cheesesteaks and all that stuff, that there was a good possibility I was going to end up that same kid again. And I just had to keep telling myself that. And sure enough, the more I kept telling myself that, the more it was like second nature to just know that, like, okay, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. Like, you know, go to this side of the street and don't go on the other side. And it just, and because a lot of people, they want the results quick, and it's not going to happen quick. Like, it took me, I mean, I've been going at it 10 years, and I still feel like I don't have it all figured out. You know, I'm only 31 years old, and it took a while for me to get this fitness thing together where I was able to work out. And, you know, it wasn't just like yesterday. I just all of a sudden was like, I think I'm going to like start going on podcasts and write books. It was like, and I didn't even want to do it. Like, I didn't want to write another book, but, you know, I felt like there was something deeper calling me, and it was my passion for recovery, but not like so much in the, like, talking about like sobriety. It was more like, okay, like, it was more like, what kind of tools and tips can I have for when you do get into recovery, on how you can like really thrive, like how you can be healthy again. And that's why I really wanted to just be more open about sharing my message of hope and encouragement to just help people, you know, focus on being better versions of themselves.
31, 3 books on your belt. I got sober when you said 31. I was like, shit, man, I got sober at 31. You got like 10 years under your belt. That's amazing, man. You have a bright future ahead of you, my friend.
I mean, I appreciate the kind words, and it's been an honor to talk to you. I mean, I've been following you for quite some time, and just to be able to kind of just sit in the room, you know, with my name on the wall there, it's really humbling.
Well, it's cool. It's been an honor to talk to you. Your story is amazing. The trajectory is incredible. It's super inspiring. And it's just proof positive of what can happen when you get sober and you take stock of your life and responsibility for your actions and your decisions, and you begin to pay it forward, and you develop a spiritual life and a physically healthy life. Like across the board, all of these things can congeal to craft this life that you never thought that you wanted or knew that you wanted, to be this, beacon of hope and light for so many people out there. It's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, as long as, I'm staying true to who I am and genuine, and that's all that counts, and just being able to really be there for people and never forget where I came from. And I mean, that was always the big thing is I have friends that reach out to me. They're like, "You're like a celebrity now." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just a person I'm just trying to help people. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not anybody who's better than anybody else. I'm not smart. I just want to really just help people and, share my story with as many people as possible, because it's a huge problem now. I mean, more people are dying from drug overdoses now than car accidents. Huge. I mean, it's not like it's a small thing anymore." So with that in mind, let's close it down with some words of wisdom or some hope for the person out there who's listening to this, who is stuck and in that cycle where they feel like they just can't quit. I mean, I really would just say just not to give up on yourself, and to just know that life will be better on the other side of the tunnel. And, if you're standing in that dark tunnel right now and you can't see light, I think it's just important to have faith and just know that, like, faith is being able to see what's not seen, and that light will be at the end of the tunnel if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, like one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, because what's behind you. If you turn around and go back to that dark place, where that gets you. So why not try something different, and just to know that, like, you're not a fuck up. You just fucked up. I think a lot of people kind of they label themselves as a fuck up. I mean, I hear it a lot. And I'm like, no, you're not. You just you made mistakes. It's okay. We all make mistakes. What did you learn from it? And I think it's important for people to understand that, like, they're not a failure. To not identify with your actions. Right. Because you did these things, it doesn't necessarily mean that's who you are. And I think that's a big one, because you think, how could I be this person who's constantly making these terrible choices? I must be an awful human being. And it's like, no, you're a drug addict, or you're an alcoholic. These are not who you really are. Right. You're suffering from a condition that is compelling you to make choices that are not in your best interest and that are alienating everyone around you. But the good news is we can fix that. Right. Right. So I love what you said, and I would just supplement it with these words, which is, if you feel like you're in a hopeless state, that there is always hope, and you need not ever drink or use again if you don't want to. There is help available to you, and faith is super important, as you mentioned, but also works are as well. You need to raise your hand and ask for help. You need to get over whatever fear you have around asking for help. Addicts and alcoholics, they want to just solve the problem by themselves. Yeah. I know, as somebody who unsuccessfully attempted that, it's hard to do it alone. Most people can't. I couldn't. It's okay to ask for help. And I think you'll find if you extend yourself in that regard, there are a lot of people around who'd be more than willing to help you. And there is a path forward. And, as somebody who's been, a part of this community for a long time, I've seen lives change in such dramatic fashion. It would just blow your mind. I mean, the stuff of cinema, it's crazy. And the life, as we said earlier, the life that you didn't even think that you wanted is out there waiting for you. It's not the end. It is the beginning. Couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks for spending some time with me today, man. Thanks for having me, man. I care about these issues a lot, and I really love how you carry the message, man. So much love and success to you. The new book is called The Heart of Recovery. It's out March 15th? March 12th. March 12th.
come to bookstore soon, man. You can find that on Amazon. And what else, man? Are you doing any like public events where people can come and see you or shake your hand? Or
no, I mean, I really don't have much planned.
Back to Maryland.
Just going back to Maryland. That I don't know.
Doing like a book tour or anything like that?
I wanted to, and I talked to my publicist, and he was just like, I mean, we kind of want. I want it, but I mean, again, people are buying books online now, and I just like. I'm not gonna retire being an author. I didn't like this book isn't gonna make me a ton of money. I don't expect it to. If it does, great. But it's just part of my message, I guess. You know, I still am a trainer. I love training people, and just hopefully the book it just supplements that to help people know that there's tools out there and there's different ways. You know, you might not have it all figured out, but there's a lot of people that have tried and have had some success with it, and I just hope that they pick it up.
Cool. If people want to connect with you, DougBopst.com and at Doug_Bopst on Instagram. Those are the best places.
Yep.
All right, dude. Any last words? How do you feel?
I feel great, man. This has been an honor. This is definitely worth the East to West Coast trip.
All right, cool. Are you going to go see Amy?
I saw her yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay,
we went. Cool. We walked around Santa Monica and then I was like, oh, you should let me train you in person. She's like, no.
Only on Skype?
So I went to her place and I saw her little home gym and put together a pull-up bar for her that she doesn't think she'll ever be able to use. But I said, we'll get there.
All right, good deal, man. All right, well, come back and talk to me again sometime.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
All right, peace. Lance.